Hi, Ali.
Hi, Yoshka. How are you?
I'm great. You?
I'm doing great. So glad to have you here and you viewers as well. This will be the start of something very special that we are calling regenerable. So the word regenerable is not that well known. It means to be able to be regenerated. But what are we doing here?
That's a good question, Ali. Why are we sitting actually here? Like from my perspective, in the last years, we had some crises that were kind of stacked on each other. Like there's a global climate crisis that everybody's aware of now. It's a big topic. And then came Corona, COVID, and then the Ukraine war. And like people are just hoping that one of the crises will hopefully early or later be gone. But it looks like there are many crises even coming in the future. So we know it's about finding a way how to handle it. And what I saw in myself and also in other people, that all this kind of uncertainty in the end just overwhelms people because they don't know what should I do. I feel totally helpless in the end. And for me, it was a bit like that. And I was like, okay, what kind of options do I have in the end? What can I still move? What kind of impact
what
can I
impact
bring?
can you have?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know the feeling, there's one crisis after the another, especially when they come all at the same time. It can be quite overwhelming, but I think that we still have a lot of things that we can control and a lot that we can do together that can collectively shift the balance back away from uncertainty, as you said, and more towards peace and harmony among not just each other, but with the planet and the entire ecosystem. So addressing this uncertainty, this dealing with multiple crises and trying to get some semblance of control and impact back in our own lives is what we're trying to achieve with Regenerable.
Yeah, from my perspective, I totally agree what you just talked about. It's kind of, we're coming from an age of separation. And that's kind of many problems we have right now to do with separation, like competition, scarcity, and so on. Like the whole economy built around that.
And with COVID, we were literally separated from each other for many months, if not years. So I think this is bringing each other closer, not just people to people, but also being closer to nature, being closer with other people, with your environments. I think it's a healthy movement that we're starting to realize that, there are interdependencies between us and our environments. And when we impact our environment, it impacts us back. And so to kind of take charge of this relationship and to mend it in a way, that's what we're doing. So let's take a look at what we have in store for this first episode. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to give you a bit more of an in-depth context. So what are we doing exactly at Regenerable? Why is it that we are sitting here and discussing these topics? Why is it that we've laid out a roadmap? What's the idea? What's the mission of Regenerable? And we will then take a closer look into how exactly we hope to achieve these things, not just operationally, but also conceptually. What points are there to cover? What areas in your life can you improve? Can you take back in control? And then we'll also give a rough sort of timeline of the things that we're planning for the next few months. So let's dive right into it.
Looks great.
So the first thing is what we call, and has also been called, the Great Acceleration. So since 1950, there have been many socioeconomic as well as Earth system trends that have been on a steady increase. So this goes from things like the population, the use of water, travel, investments, GDP, but also things like the amount of carbon dioxide, the amount of nitrous oxide, methane, fish capturing, ocean acidification, and surface temperature, the temperature of the planet. They've all been rising steadily from 1950 until today, and the projection is that they will continue rising. And this is a problem because as we now start increasing in population and we become increasingly global, we are understandably for the first time realizing what a small place the Earth is, right? So there's not infinite places you can go to for resources, and at some point, all of this will have an effect back on us. So this is a sort of first learning, but there are by now many reports, many conventions, even climate agreements that show that there needs to be some action. Things cannot continue indefinitely the way they have been continuing. And that also kind of gives a notion to the idea of sustainability, ESG, and the topic of green that has been rising in the last few years. As you said, sort of the climate crisis that has been ongoing for a longer time, but that has been in the public eye for a short time. And I think this graph will kind of highlight why we believe that sustainable is no longer enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree to that. And how I also see it is that everybody still believes that it's enough to just be sustainable, but sustainable just means in the end that we're trying to reduce the damage we we put into the world out of the activities we're doing as a company, for example.
Absolutely. So it's like whatever we do, we make sure that there's no additional damage, that everything is covered for, and that when we come back in a year or two, it will be the same way, so we can continue. Basically, you're thinking ahead. You don't want to take the entire farm today. You want to leave a little so that you have some more tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but if you compare, like, just we are looking at a single person, you're taking credits every year, and you're building up loans, and you're quite in debt. And then once you see, okay, maybe it's enough when I just stop taking new credits, but then you still have the debt, and you kind of can ignore the debts. Who cares about them?
You still have
earlier or later, a bank will come and say, hey, sorry, you still have to pay for the debt. It's totally fine that you don't take new credits, but if you pay for the debt, and that's something we are kind of ignoring if we think it's fine if we're sustainable. Like, companies still have to see what kind of damage have we already produced in the last, since the beginning
of the industrial revolution.
Yes, the company's existing in the end. And nobody really wants to go back that far and try to find out what's that damage that I've already produced. And at the same time, it's not just about your own company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're part of the whole world.
Yeah. So your actions impact others, and others' actions impact you.
Yeah, we're living in a system. It's about, you just talked about, it's about interconnection, interdependence.
Yeah.
So I can just care for myself, like as I would be independent in this world, but we are kind of ignoring the complexity of the world. Like, globalization brought complexity that has never been there before.
Absolutely.
And we cannot just act kind of in my small area, everything's all right.
Think beyond just your bubble and absolutely. I think the analogy that you brought about sustainability being about no longer taking any debt, but that we're still missing the point of what about the existing debt that needs to be paid off. So I think that's as you'll see in this graph, if starting even a few years ago, if we start improving our sustainability knowledges and also implement it, we eventually reach a point of zero. But even from there, it has to, the next step has to be made, as you said, about paying back the debts, about regenerating or restoring the damages done from, the industrial revolution or the company's existence until today. And even then, if we tackle this one step first and then go to the other, as we can see in this graph, it still won't be enough to avert a climate crisis, which I think prompts the idea that we have to start this downward trend, the idea of owning and being responsible and accountable for damages done to date, and also working on fixing them, restoring them. I think that's probably the best ways we can beat this climate crisis and sort of take back ownership of it. But I think there's a lot more to this than just about climate, right? It's not just about restoring damages onto the climate, because as you said, there are interconnections and dependencies, not just between us and the environment, but us and other actors, other companies, other governments, other people. And so when taking all of this into consideration, I think the picture is suddenly much bigger, and there needs to be more considerations made when you enter a deal, when you make a sale. So those are things that broaden the scope of your understanding.
And one important point I just want to add, what you just talked about is, I guess most people already know about the climate crisis. Everybody is kind of, it's not something totally new.
Yeah, everybody's heard of it.
But what is missing is kind of from the knowledge, really the understanding. And the understanding, because of the missing understanding, people also don't see the sense of urgency in the end, because they don't understand it, because they still feel if you are missing the complexity that's behind climate crisis, then you feel like, I just look at the past, and from the past I can say how it will develop in the future. But that would just be like if you would have a similar, a linear growth, but it's not like that. It's complexity, and you don't know how the growth will be in the future. Will probably not be linear. And when people really understand kind of the complexity and system thinking that's behind it, they also see more kind of the sense of urgency, and they're more willing to change their behavior, because that's what we need in the end, behavior change.
Absolutely. So it's about transforming people in ways that makes it more viable for long term, viable for sustainable and cooperation between people and the environment, as you say. Absolutely. So I mean, the solution, as you just beautifully put, is that we depend on a healthy planet, and without a planet, there are no humans, and without humans, there is no economy or ecosystem. So I think this urgency and this lack of information is something that needs to be filled, because if we keep operating on a wrong basis of knowledge or facts, we'll be running into a wall, quite literally. So that's definitely a point. So, well, what's the solution then? The solution is, as you said, paying back the debt, regeneration. But what does that actually mean?
Yeah, the first point is, of course, stop doing more damage. It's kind of obvious. So you not overusing the stock anymore. Because we already know we kind of have overused it in the past. And rebuilding it. That's that's kind of the difference between sustainability and regeneration. Regeneration goes further by saying, hey, it's not enough just to preserve. We really need to rebuild it. We need to change.
So not just avoid making further damage, but also start restoring and regenerating the damage already done to date.
Creating the conditions that nature can really work on their own in the end.
Absolutely, yeah. That makes sense, and I think that really allows not just everybody, but everything to thrive, to really be at their best, and I think that's also important for. It's also important for us in a sort of selfish way. It's also important for us that everybody else thrives, because only when the nature is green and the economy is doing well, we are doing well.
Yeah.
So it's sort of regeneration is sort of in a way selfish, but it's just the understanding of the self. It's not just, as you said, your own bubble or your own little zone, but understanding that we are so connected and dependent on different actors, our environment, and other players, that we need to be looking out for the welfare of everybody. We need to also consider beyond our own garden gates and our own fence. So I think this graph is something you drew up. I think this perfectly explains it, right? You have to the left, you have the sort of a negative balance, if you can call it, right? You have the conventional methods, is basically what we've been doing from ever since humanity has been around, almost like from the Middle Ages, the Industrial Revolution, and up until recently, the 1950s, 60s, 70s, was really in this conventional area where nature was sort of regarded as a big field where you can extract resources, because we were just at the beginning, so to speak. And slowly we realized that, well, the green aspect is also important. We can't do that much damage. We have to be a bit more careful. And as you mentioned, sustainability is right, the neutral point in between, where you do no damage, but you also don't make up for any past damage. So you live in the middle. And in an ideal world where everything is restored and everything works, then it's enough to be sustainable. But I think, as you said, we have to go beyond, because we've lived such a long period in the conventional way, that not even the restorative area, but the regenerative area is where we should be, where we are serving this system as a whole, and where we are making up for the damages done during the conventional.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to point out, but you can also is like from where we are coming from, conventional took much more energy. So we needed much more energy out of non-renewable energy resources. And the more we're moving to regenerative practices, the less energy we need in the end. Because the more we also work in systems together with nature and using symbiosis.
Absolutely. So being more in sync and utilizing our environment to the fullest potential, not just being efficient, but going one step further and introducing a lifestyle that allows for almost the same amount of convenience and pleasure that we have today, but without doing any damage to any further damage, and restoring the previous states, as you mentioned.
And it's about really understanding the whole system.
Absolutely.
Not just really to see myself as part of a bigger system. And by changing the view, the perspective, I also kind of first can become more aware of all the things that I'm doing right now. Are they helpful for the whole system or not? And how can I change them so that they're really regenerative for the whole system?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's an increased awareness, that the awareness that we are part of a bigger system, and that we have to be responsible, and we should take into consideration the entire system and not just our own four walls. Absolutely. So, how do we regenerate? You mentioned before that it involves some habits. So how do we change the entire world, if that's what we're going for. How are we going to change, all the governments, the NGOs, the companies, the corporations, the people, the kind of, how do we go about all this?
When you look at all those different kind of different systems, like smaller systems as individuals, but also bigger systems as organizations and companies with, or even like governments, countries, or the huge NGOs. They all kind of have a culture.
Yes.
And it's about how can we change the culture. So to a more regenerative culture step by step. And the culture is mostly shaped by behavior. So it's really about changing behavior. And that's something, as everybody knows, it's not that easy. It's not just say, okay, I stop smoking tomorrow and then I stop smoking. And that's the same for organizations, companies, and every individual. It's quite hard.
But I think that, like you mentioned, organizations and culture are one important aspect that can influence people. But I think that people can also influence organizations and cultures. I think that when somebody in the office maybe, or in your friend circle, or at home, if somebody has an inspiring new, an inspiring new idea or lifestyle, they decide, I'm going to use the bicycle, or I'm going to donate to something that inspires us. And I think that can have a rippling effect across entire culture. So I think, as you mentioned, it's the people that influence the culture, and then the culture that influences the people. So these are sort of the two main points that must instigate the change for the entire system to adapt, because you can't have a digital organization, for example, if there are not digital habits and practices all across the company. So I think if there needs to be a regenerative lifestyle and way of business across the entire world, every company, every person, everybody has to play along with this game. So I think it's important that these are the main 2 points that can instigate this change. So to change people, that's where we are going to start. Our idea will be, being able to assess your lifestyle. And ideally, we have a tool that we are currently working on, where you can assess your lifestyle and you receive a score, as well as a tailor-made plan with habits that will put you on a 60 or 90-day path, that you can implement these habits step by step and live a more regenerative and restorative lifestyle. And of course, we're also building a community around it, so that you can have interactions with people. You can push each other, motivate each other, get new ideas, maybe new tips or tricks. You can try something together. So that's our aspect, or our approach to changing people for now. But if you want to cover the aspects of what our plan, maybe not tomorrow, but
as we just also talked about organizations. Of course, it's also super important to change the way organizations work. And there's also mostly about culture and behavior, and how do you shape it, is really changing business processes and their impact, and by that changing also the culture and the habits of the employees in the end. And it's a bit, in the end, I would say it's a bit more complex, because there are more people, more systems in the end involved, than if you're just trying to change something as an individual, as we all know. But we also want to support organizations in the future with really plans how they can become more regenerative. So to be really able to still turn the ship around, we need all the big organizations on board.
Absolutely.
Without them, we can't achieve it, but we have to start somewhere. So it's in the end, it's a mix of the bottom up. So every individual tries to change their lifestyle, and the top down. All the big organizations, governments, and so on also need to change. But it's not like finger pointing. You have to change first. It's more like, hey, I take self-responsibility. I can change something. I can be a role model, like Andy said. Just be the change you want to see in the world. And that's what we want to do. We support both directions with our approach.
Absolutely. I think it's sort of like a pendulum where you have to start. And I think, helping people and building a community will help organizations make the switch, and they in turn will motivate more people. And as the movement grows, more companies, more corporations, maybe governments and bigger bodies will also start on this movement. So I think it's a sort of a big heavy pendulum that we have to start getting moved.
Totally.
So we've discussed sort of, how we're going to do it, but what exactly is there? What areas of like what fields are there within regeneration? What areas of focus, and what areas of my life does it impact me? These are some important questions, very, very in-depth and big questions, obviously. And we are by no means experts, but we see this not as a final product that we're delivering, but more of, to use a software analogy, a beta, where we constantly improve it with feedback from users and members, and we consistently improve the tool to, of course, obviously, ideally match the needs and the sentiments of the world at large. So this is a work in progress, ad infinitum, basically. But the main topic fields within regeneration or the regenerative lifestyle will be one, being agile. So this includes a lifestyle of learning, a lifestyle of being aware, being alert, being resilient towards change, and adapting within time, so that you don't have to worry about being replaced at your job or being behind times in matters of technology, economics, politics, etc. So that is definitely one aspect, because as you mentioned, that's very close to change. And another aspect we feel is important is psychology. So this means, how do human beings think? That's an important aspect, especially with the next topic. You'll see change and habits. So it's very much the point of agility and psychology is to embolden change and create new habits. And we hope to also perfect that with some insights from neuroscience, because that can also be incredibly rewarding and widen the understanding of how we can effectively reach people, how we can effectively implement a change. But then there are more bigger topics, more larger than life topics, such as spiritual enlightenment. So, having your own path in life, having your own purpose, your own mission. This includes leadership, and leadership is just a fancy word for responsibility for areas of your own life, and then beyond that, whether it's a family or a small company or a bigger company, it's about being responsible. And then we move towards a more sort of value-based field, so human values such as justice, courage, wisdom, knowledge, being inclusive, being empathetic, being sympathetic, being friendly, being open, systemic thinking, and also towards building a good character, a good personality. So as you can see, the topic fields are very wide, and obviously this isn't final. but the areas in which this regeneration touches upon in an individual are very large. So this begs the question: if this is so big, what areas of your life, of my daily life, will this impact? I'm guessing a lot, right?
Yeah. And what I just want to add to is, you already mentioned it a bit. It's a lot about also a shift of consciousness, what we need. Becoming more conscious that it's not just about me, that I'm feeling good, mostly short-term perspective also. It's more about that I'm feeling really good, and at the same time everybody else feels good. And that's also has to do with the change from separation, that it's just about myself, my independency, the move to teaching at time called it interbeing. So it's like really it's about connection. I'm interdependent in you, and I'm just a part of something bigger. Absolutely. And I cannot separate myself. It's not healthy. It's not good for myself in the end, and it's also not good for the whole system, because as you see, it just leads to a lot of damage. Yeah, I heard this quote that said, your lung is only half your breathing apparatus, because the carbon dioxide that you exhale, the trees inhale, and the oxygen that they exhale, you inhale. So it's about, if you really understand that every tree, every plant is part of your lung, is necessary for you to breathe, you think about, deforestation or pollution in a much different way. You come to respect your environment much more. I think that expanded awareness and consciousness is really important, as you mentioned. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And when we just look at the different areas of life, and one very important part, of course, is health and well-being. So it's about sleep, nutrition, and exercising. So how well do you feel in your body? How healthy are you? And also about not just your physical, but also psychological health. So how's your mood? How do you take care of that? And like all the other areas of life have to do with that, and they are all interconnected in the end. So you can't just take one part out of it, because they all influence each other. And the next one, career and purpose, also has a lot to do with your health and well-being. So kind of what is the impact the company you're working for is making in the world? What is your purpose you bring to your job? What do you want to bring into the world in the end? Which kind of impact do you want to have? Like also family, how do you treat each other? How do you treat your wife? How do you treat your kids? How much time do you take for them? How much quality time do you also have? How much are you trying to improve the relationship with them? How much energy do you put into it? And love life, of course, is also another important aspect. Like how are you behaving in your love life with your loved one, and how much it's the same a bit like in family. It's also a lot about relationships and building quality relationships in the end, that are like 1 + 1 = 3. So like really having a strong relationship, because that's also like kind of a fundament in life. And friends and social is also connected, like those 3 areas, all about relationships in different areas of your life. And then, of course, personal finance. So how do you are you always struggling to survive? Or do you really try to find a sustainable way that you like can really have more money in the end than you need and can invest some part of it? And how do you invest it in the end? Like, do you look for companies or like do you buy stocks of companies that are really trying to change the world in a positive way and have a positive impact? And or there's so many other different options. You can invest your money in a more purposeful way in the end.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
also, how do you interact in your community? Like in a bigger part. Like I'm more like just you are benefiting from it, but you're not giving something back in the end. Or is it really like you benefit and you give back? It's like a circle.
Yeah.
And another part that you've already touched a bit is personal and spiritual development. So that's about consciousness, about your whole life, about yourself, and also fun recreation. So how do you spend your free time? You take time to really,
maybe an instrument or art form. Absolutely.
How much energy do you get out of those things? And how much energy do you invest? So really like also do they help you to regenerate in the end?
And do they help you regenerate others also? Maybe it's different type, like maybe you are going to do some service, like cleaning up the streets or serving food to the homeless, there are different ways that you can charge yourself up. So absolutely,
And the last area of your life, like your physical environment, so your home, like what kind of how do you heat your apartment, stuff like that, but also how how do you feel at home? Do you feel really, oh, that's a place I can really relax and I can refuel myself? Or is it more like, oh, that's actually a place I don't like to spend time? And also physical environment, of course, how are your shopping habits? What kind of stuff are you buying? Do you buy more than you need? And how was it produced, manufactured? And really looking at all these areas also in a more holistic way. And so it's really about looking at your life, your whole life, seeing how all those parts interact with each other.
I think, as you mentioned, that the interaction is very interesting because for example, how you interact with your community will have an impact on maybe your fun, recreation, your physical environment, your personal finance. It might have an impact on your friends and social life, and they all, each has an interaction and an effect on each other. So it's really interesting, as you said, to view it holistically, to not single out something, but to view it as a system that interacts, moves, and even you could even say that even lives and breathes.
Yeah, and then it's getting interesting because there's not just one area of life where you can change something really kind of that has a big impact on your life. It's more kind of like a domino effect.
Absolutely.
So you just touch one area of your life, you really focus on that, you try to change it in a positive way, and that can influence all the other areas. And then it's not just about you, because you're part of a bigger system.
Absolutely.
You also influence the system outside of you. So when you really take care of yourself, become more regenerative in the end, you have a positive impact on the whole world. So and that's amazing.
That's amazing. As you said, you can just have one small change in one area of your life, but that dominoes into all areas of your life, and you domino into other people, and maybe at the office when you go out to do some sport, or at some club, and your friends and your family, and that spreads. So it's really sort of like like it can really spread and change the whole world.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So there is a lot of power. There is a lot of things that we can do as individuals, even in the face of multiple crises, to take back and also give back, take back control. Let's give back to the world. That's very interesting. So how are we gonna do this?
That's a big challenge.
That's a big challenge, but I think if something doesn't scare you, then it's not big or exciting enough. So we're following this with three approaches, so to speak. So they are education, tools, and community. So let's talk about education. Education will be this podcast. So over the course of the podcast in the next year, we will be looking at different areas of life. What do they exactly mean? How do they interact with other areas of life? What practices are there? What has been done in this field? So we'll have a full overview. The entire overview will come in the next episode. But basically, we'll have not just discussions among us, where we prepare and inform, but also we will be interviewing experts in this field, researchers, scientists, entrepreneurs, CEOs, who are also starting to lead this change, this revolution even, and we'll be sharing that on social media as well, and also creating a blog. So there'll be enough for you to learn about through different channels, from our blog to YouTube to anywhere you consume a podcast and interviews. So that's about educating, about making people aware, and also making people aware of the depth of the field and what all it entails. But just knowing about things isn't useful, right? It's like if you have knowledge that you can't apply, it's like food that you can't digest. What's the purpose?
And it's really important also to see that it's about knowledge, but also already about understanding, because that's the next step before you can change something, when you use it.
Absolutely.
You really need to understand it. And that's why complexity and so on is really that you kind of look at your own life. Where am I right now? Access it so that you see, like, okay, let's do a survey about all the different areas of my life to find out where am I right now? Where are kind of the potential for improvement, to change something in a positive way for myself and for the whole world. And getting advice, where can I change it? How can I change it? And we really want to use, like, in a way with also like Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's really that we want to use all those approaches that are out there, want to put them together to help people to really change, to really get from knowing to understanding to change and to celebrating this. And then having cycles of repeating it.
Absolutely. So that's why we plan on introducing a sort of an online assessment that you can complete for free. Which will have some inputs, some questions for you to answer, which will then provide a comprehensive score for you to better understand, how was your standing in terms of being regenerative in the different areas of life, as we introduced them before, but also specific tips, the sort of, as James Clear calls it, the keystone habits, the smallest improvements you can make that will really kickstart it and almost push you towards this movement, that will almost make it inevitable that you become a regenerative person. So we'll be presenting that tailor-made tool very soon. And of course, we'll also be having some challenges. You can even win some medals and, really celebrate the progress you've made and also the impact you've had, not just on yourself, but on your community and your environment and the world at large. So this is why we focus on education, because as you said, only from knowledge Then we go to understanding, to implementing, and then to achieving. So hopefully with these tools, with this approach, we can do it. But let's not forget the last point, which was community. I mean, when you're implementing something, it helps if you have a friend, if you're not just doing it alone, right? So we'll be trying to build a strong community of people who are also interested in this topic, people who can really share the candlelight and invigorate each other and motivate each other, inspire each other. And this will help you push yourself, and that will help you not just transform yourself, but again, as we showed before, your community and your entire world. So this is our dream down the road. We really hope to bring this to a large scale and really transform the entire world.
Yeah, and the community is a core aspect for myself too, because it's so valuable to have fellows who are supporting each other. That you see, we're together on this journey. You're not alone. And we cheer each other up. We celebrate success stories. We celebrate also kind of things that are maybe sometimes not working out as expected. Because in the end, we have to do with complexity. Complexity is all about experimenting. So we do some kinds of hypotheses that we tried out. Sometimes it works, and we're like, cool, awesome,
correct.
And sometimes it doesn't work out, and we also like we learn something out of it.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
It's either you succeed or you learn so you can succeed the next time.
Yeah.
But it's about, as you said, experimenting, taking small steps, seeing is this the right direction. If the feedback is right, keep going. If not, just adjust the course. That's all.
And that's also the approach we use here.
Exactly.
Like a totally agile approach. We're trying stuff out. We don't know if it works, if it helps anybody. We're trying it out. If it doesn't work, we stop it. If it works, we keep on doing it and improving it.
But the goal is that we have a competent education base, a holistic tool that helps people in the community, that supports each other, and to creating a more regenerative world and a more an inspiring community. So that's it from our side for this time. If you're listening unto here, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really,
we have a website. It's regenerable.com, regenerable.org. Sorry, regenerable.org. Visit our website. You can, if you have any questions or comments, queries, feel free to shoot us an email. You can find the details on the website. And if you have any suggestions for topics or for maybe some feedback you have for the questionnaire, for the assessment, or for the tips, this is, as we said, you are part of this community, and it's a learning process for us as well. We're definitely not going to get it right the first time, but as you said, we stay agile, we keep adjusting course, and with all of your help, we can all together steer our ships towards a regenerative lifestyle and the regenerative world. Yeah. So that's it from your Regenerables. See you next time.
See you. Bye.
Bye.